Farhana Sheikh. Simpang Renggam MP Maszlee Malik denies allegations of corruption against him. And ahead of the Johor election, we talk to Johor Ngundi on getting the young home to vote. That's coming up. Protect Health's vaccination centres, or PPVs, for children will operate on selected days starting Thursday. These include integrated PPVs and off-site PPVs in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor areas. Integrated PPVs in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor will begin inoculating children aged 5 to 12 from Thursday, while selected off-site PPVs in Kuala Lumpur will start on Saturday. These PPVs will operate from Mondays to Sundays. Meanwhile, off-site PPVs in Selangor will begin their operations from Saturday and operate on weekends. Selected private hospitals will also join the program beginning from next Monday and operate on selected days. The ceiling price for chicken has been reduced by 20 cents to 8 ringgit 70 cents per kg. This will be effective from February 5th to June 5th. The price of eggs, however, will remain the same. In addition, the government has decided to allow all approved permit or AP holders to import whole chicken, having previously limited this to only bringing in parts of it. Hypermarkets will also be allowed to import whole chicken on their own. Prime Minister Dato Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said this in a statement today after chairing a special meeting with the National Action Council on cost of living. Malaysia recorded the lowest number of dengue cases in a decade, with 26,365 cases last year. This was more than 70% drop compared to 2020. Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said the main factor for the decline had yet to be determined, but that dengue remains a public health threat in Malaysia during the COVID-19 pandemic.
He said based on previous data and trends in dengue fever, the ministry found a high increase in cases every 4 to 5 years, with the surges recorded in 2010, 2015 and 2019. As such, he said, dengue fever cases are expected to increase again in 2024 or 2025, with the incidence expected to be higher than the number of cases recorded in 2019. Dr. Nur Hisham said the ministry's efforts were focused on public health measures, especially early detection and vector management, adding that there was still no effective mechanism to overcome the dengue virus.
The upcoming Johor polls will become the first election in which Undi 18 and automatic voter registration will come into effect. We speak to Aidi Zuhaili of Youth Movement Johor Ngundi on the group's efforts to encourage young voters from Johor who are out of state to go home and vote.
Johor Ngundi is the initiative being made by my team and I'm myself is actually to help the young voters, especially. It's actually not the young voters, but we are focusing to the young voters to make them have ability to ease them or to reduce their burden to return to the Johor, like maybe providing them as transportations like bus, or maybe support their bus ticket, or maybe a plane if they have come from the Borneo, to come and to return to the Johor to cast their vote on the elections day. This, I call as a small effort, actually could help to increase the turnout voters. And also, in the meantime, simultaneously, we also increase the advocacy of the Johor state elections to them.
Johor Ngundi is concerned that many Johor voters, especially youths, will not return to vote because they assume the general election will be held soon. They pointed out that that is what happened with the Malacca and Sarawak state elections, which saw low voter turnout.
I'm expecting that the voter turnout will be quite similar to the previous state elections like Malacca state election and also Sarawak state elections. Furthermore, the increments of about 700,000 of eligible young voters which being contributed by young Johorians starting from 18 years old could make the total numbers of voters become bigger than the previous elections. especially in a general election before, or maybe the state elections that being already being made in the Malacca before this. These situations, it could lead to a percentage of turnout voter for Johor Post. If the young voters are not facilitated or being eased to exercise their rights as the first timer, the young voters, especially Undi 18 being implemented from the 18 to the 30 years old, will not return to their home for casting or exercising their vote.
The upcoming Johor state election will see an increase of almost 30% new voters, or over 749,000 new voters following the implementation of Undi 18.
Simpang Renggam MP Dr. Maszlee Malik has denied any allegations of corruption after the MACC opened an investigation against him. The former Education Minister said he welcomed the investigations as he has nothing to hide. He said the allegations, including claims that he had received monies during his ministerial tenure, were a malicious character assassination attempt ahead of the upcoming Johor election. Earlier, Maszlee claimed MACC officers intimidated his staff following his involvement in demonstrations against MACC Chief Azam Baki. MACC has denied the claim and said it is currently investigating Maszlee following 2 reports that were lodged against him. More in a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Selamat datang ke yang mana satu idaman you. Jika anda ada RM109, mana satu yang anda mahu? 90 saluran Astro atau internet laju? Persoalannya, kenapa you kena pilih kalau semuanya ada dengan bundle jimat, internet laju dan 90 saluran Astro hanya RM109 sebulan sahaja? Kan? Call 03-7481-3000 sebelum promosi habis.
Welcome back. One person dies from a road accident every 84 minutes in Malaysia, and a bulk of it involve motorcyclists. While potholes, bad road conditions and poor road design are factors in accidents involving motorcyclists, the human factor cannot be eliminated. We speak to community health specialist Professor Dr. Kulantayan Mani on what needs to be done.
Authorities said there are roughly 12 road accident deaths per day in the earlier part of the pandemic, but the number has begun to rise.
The main issue is actually speeding. If every vehicle, no matter whether you're using a motorcycle or car or any public transport, as long as if we can reduce our speed, then we have 2 types of return. The first one is we are able to manage our vehicle much better. Therefore, we can avoid a crash from happening. That's one. Second, if in the event a crash still happens, the injury severity will be much lower if the speed is low. If we look, of course, now is slightly we are moving towards the post-pandemic. Therefore, travel in terms of travel frequency has increased. Okay, if we are looking at specifically for motorcyclists, in order to make them safe, besides reducing speed, what we have to do is to make sure that they also use the safety products which are available for them. That means the main safety product that they have is the motorcycle safety helmet, which is being certified by CIREM. So we need them to use the CIREM certified helmets. That's one. Second is to make sure that they use it properly by tying it and securing it properly. That's 2.
According to the Police Traffic Investigation and Enforcement Department, some 15,000 summonses are issued every day for traffic offences nationwide. Kulantayan calls for strict enforcement of the law, but said the responsibility should not lie on traffic enforcement alone.
Employer enforcement. Employer enforcement is very powerful. There are some institutions where people are more worried of the employer enforcement effects. Because say, for example, if I'm working in a company and that company has a rule saying that you are not supposed to drive using mobile phones. And if I'm caught because of using a mobile phone, the company's action is much more severe compared to the traffic enforcement agency's action. So sometimes we are more worried of the employer's action behind of our activity. So if every segment of the community plays their role, from self-enforcement, family enforcement, community enforcement, and finally industrial enforcement, then I feel that we will be able to solve half of the problem, or more, even slightly more than that. And finally, we are only shifting a small burden towards the traffic enforcement as the last checkpoint in order to get things correct.
On to the international front. In Afghanistan, more than 100 ex-government officials and soldiers are believed to have been killed, despite the Taliban assuring that those linked to the previous leadership will be given amnesty.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said a UN mission had received credible allegations that more than 100 members of the ousted Afghan government, its security forces, and those who worked with the international troops have been killed since the Taliban seized Kabul on August 15. The report also highlighted that human rights defenders and media workers continue to face attack, intimidation, harassment, and killings. Guterres recommended the Council approve a restructuring of the UN mission to deal with the worsening social and economic conditions in Afghanistan, including the creation of a new human rights monitoring unit. Afghanistan is in the grip of a humanitarian disaster. The UN warned that more than half of the population is facing extreme hunger. Since the Taliban takeover, the US and other Western countries have stopped aid to Afghanistan and frozen billions of Afghan government assets abroad. The UN Security Council last month unanimously adopted a resolution to allow some aid to reach desperate Afghans without violating international sanctions. But there are growing calls from human rights groups for the West to release more funds, particularly in the middle of a harsh winter. Afghanistan was almost entirely dependent on foreign aid under the previous US-backed government, but jobs have dried up and most civil servants haven't been paid for months.
North Korea has released photographs said to have been taken from its most powerful missile launch in 5 years. This is Pyongyang's 7th missile test this month alone.
The pictures showed the missile being launched from a mobile launcher, as well as images of the Korean peninsula and surrounding areas from space. Pyongyang confirmed it had tested a Hwasong-12 intermediate-range ballistic missile, the first time a nuclear-capable missile of that size has been launched since 2017. The same weapon had once threatened to target the US territory of Guam, sparking fears North Korea could resume long-range testing.
Bali will welcome back international tourists starting February 4th. Indonesian officials said fully vaccinated travellers would be required to undergo 5 to 7 days quarantine. Bali opened to tourists from selected countries 3 months ago, including China, New Zealand and Japan in mid-October. However, there had been no direct flights to the island. Singapore Airlines announced last Friday it would resume direct flights to Bali starting on February 16th. To welcome the Lunar New Year, astronauts in China's space station took time off their duties to hold traditional festive activities high above the Earth. This year is the first time the Shenzhou 13 astronauts celebrate the Spring Festival in outer space.
The 3 crew members aboard Shenzhou 13 decorated the space station with traditional Chinese paper cuts and red lanterns. They also ate dumplings, wrote Chinese poems and tuned in to the 2022 Spring Festival Gala on the Chinese New Year Eve. China launched the Shenzhou 13 spaceship on October 16th, sending the 3 astronauts on a 6-month mission to construct the nation's space station.
That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. For all the latest news updates, head on to astroawani.com and the Astro AWANI app. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching, and on behalf of AWANI tonight, we wish everyone a happy and prosperous Chinese New Year.